Welcome to a Yin for Peaceful Embodiment practice. This practice will take around about 60 minutes, an hour. If you have props at home handy to you, it could be beneficial to have some blocks. If you don't have blocks, you could use books, nice thick books, and you might also find a bolster or a large cushion to be quite a handy thing to have. However, you can also do this practice completely prop free, and for most bodies that will be okay. So it's up to you whether you prop yourself more or less. The practice of Yin Yoga is a practice where we can feel some quite deep sensations in the body. So the more props you have, the less sensation you can feel. It's really your choice, always your choice, how deep you move into these poses. I will give you some cues as we move through the practice that will give you some reminders to take it easy on yourself, to play around with what's going to work. The postures are held for quite a long time. We're going to stay for a number of minutes in each pose. That means you have time to make any adjustments and to play around a little bit with your propping. So if you're all set up, ready to go, let's begin our Yin Yoga for Peaceful Embodiment practice. We'll start by lying on our backs. So make your way onto your back. And our starting place will be a pose that's sometimes called Bananasana. We don't use Sanskrit typically in a Yin practice, so it's more about making the shapes, and we can kind of call them anything. So from this lying down position, I invite you to move both feet across to the right and to lift your head and the topmost part of your shoulders across to the right. So your body is starting to bend, make a curve like a ripe banana. And then you might choose to take one or both arms overhead. As you take your arms overhead, that may intensify the stretch sensations. And some people find once they settle into this position that they quite like to hook one ankle over the other and maybe even clasp the hands or clasp the wrist. And once you find yourself in this curved position, your practice is to soften. With each out breath, let the body sink and settle. Throughout this practice, I invite you to keep your awareness within and to feel what's happening for you. In this position, you may feel something or not too much. If it gets too intense, you have choice. You can breathe through that intensity if it's bearable. But you may opt to minimize some of that stretch sensation. So we welcome you to adjust yourself. I have found that it's wise at the beginning of a Yin pose to have only mild sensations. It really depends on how you're feeling. As you get used to resting in this position, you might observe sensations down the side of your body. It's up to you how you interpret sensation in your own body. It's thought that Yin practices dive beneath the surface and start to create a shift in the structure of connective tissue. Another way of viewing these sensations is through the lens of traditional Chinese medicine and the Taoist understanding of meridians. And this concept is based on the idea that we have channels flowing through us and around us, through which our prana in the Indian system or chi in the Chinese system, this life force energy flows. It doesn't matter if that resonates with you or not. Let the practice be what it is to you and feel whatever you feel. It's also completely fine in a yin style practice to daydream. But you may choose to gently guide yourself back to the body if it's feeling comfortable to be there. And we're sort of playing with an edge of stress and rest. Something is happening, even in the stillness. Stay here for a few more breaths. And then slowly find your way back to what feels like lying straight. And what we might observe as we move out of a yin pose is a sort of rebound sensation in the tissues that have been stretched. If you wish to, you could bend up your knees here and give them a hug towards your chest. And just allowing some length through the lower back. Maybe circle the knees a few times. So we make some gentle movements between poses. There's always a little bit of yang in every yin. And then taking your legs out long again. And this time shifting both feet across to the other side. Lift your head and shoulders across to the other side. Again, you might raise one or both arms. You could cross the ankles. Some people find they get a little bit of nerve sensation through the arms here, so wriggle and adjust. You could even rest your arm on top of a bolster if you wanted to. And that can take some of the stretch sensation out. So have a little play with the intensity of this curve down the side of the body. And see if you can find that Goldilocks sensation for you that's just right. Some sense of lengthening without making it too uncomfortable for yourself. Allowing yourself to be with whatever arises. Sensations in the body, thoughts through the mind. You can imagine your thoughts drifting by like clouds in the sky. Or drifting by like leaves on a stream. And there's a sense of a flow and a pulse and a rhythm to the body, though it may appear still. Our practice includes observing all those inner movements. And these postures that access the side body may be thought of as moving energy or chi through the gallbladder meridian, and kind of zigzags over the hip and down the outer leg. Or in the underside of the arm, you may conceptualize heart and lung meridians. But we don't need to get too intellectual about what we're feeling. And we don't need that model to explain it to us, unless it's helpful to you. And where that model may be helpful, where it is for me sometimes, is if those stretch sensations do become uncomfortable, but you choose to stay with them. You might cultivate a framework in your mind of allowing, letting things shift and move and unblock, creating more freedom in the tissues and in your mind and heart. I'll leave you with some quiet space to let the experience be your own. Staying here for a few more breaths. Perhaps exploring if each out-breath might let you soften some more, use less muscular energy. As you feel to begin to slowly shift out of this bananasana and again return to lying straight, or what feels like straight anyway. Don't worry about how it looks, just feel it from the inside. Notice any sense of those lengthened tissues rebounding. You might notice here too that felt connection between the back of your body and the firm surfaces that are supporting you. Beginning to bend up your knees. Give the knees a hug towards your torso. And again, you might like a gentle rock from side to side. Maybe a circling of the knees as well. Circling back in the other direction. And then with your feet to the mat or floor, you might take a gentle side-to-side movement with your knees. It doesn't need to be a big movement, just a soft twisting action here. And as you feel ready, take one arm overhead, roll out to the side, and press your way up to a seated position. From your seated posture, I'll invite you into our next yin pose, which will be a half butterfly. Half butterfly looks a lot like a Janu Shirsasana in Hatha Yoga. One foot is bent in towards the groin. You can make that as loose as you like. That knee could move out away from you. Shin could move out away from you. And you may also like something to support that knee if it's hanging in space. It's a nice idea. It's up to you though. Remember, we're feeling into any tension, any stretching in the body and modifying where it suits us. I've taken that right leg out to the side, and rather than reaching for the foot like you might in Hatha Yoga, I'm going to have my bolster here just as a support for me as I fold over that leg and let my head hang. Now some people will like to slide the bolster out to get the head down lower. If that's too low, another propping option is to use a block. You can take the end of your bolster up a little higher, make it even more comfortable. What we're seeking is that soft edge, not straining, but not nothing either. I invite you to turn your hands palm up. Let the head hang. As you get used to the sensations, perhaps you might move a tiny bit deeper, but there's no sense of striving. There's no reward for going further. The practice is to feel what you feel and to allow that unblocking, that free flow of information through connective tissue. And the medium for that communication in the body is thought to be water. So these practices hydrate the deep connective tissue and the layers upon layers that wrap around every muscle fibre, every organ, every joint. And we're letting the body be really soft and loose. Gravity is doing all the work. In my body, the sensation is mostly down the lower back, on the bent leg side. For some bodies, it may be more in the back of the leg, a hamstring stretch. Or maybe in the neck or middle back. The posture kind of lands in a different place for different bodies. staying here a little longer, feeling all those yin qualities of softness and coolness are turning inward. Slowly begin to lift up. Take your time as you shift out of the pose. When you've been there a while, those tissues have really lengthened. So you might like to take just a little bit of movement in between, feeling those tissues shifting, any after effects being absorbed. And then we'll find our way into full butterfly. Again, it looks a bit like a hatha pose where you might draw the heels into the groin, a Baddha Konasana. But in a yin style practice, we'll let the legs be looser, further away. Let the feet flop apart. And let the knees sink. Now we never want to force the knees down. So if you want some support, again, your blocks or books or cushions underneath the heaviest part of the legs will help support them and take some stretch out of the inner thighs and any other sensations you might be getting if it's too much. So letting the legs feel loose and heavy here, we're going to start to fold forward. Now if you're not using a prop, you can just let your head hang into the space, find some length through the back of the neck. Or if you would like a little bit of support, you can bring your bolster long ways over your feet, is how I quite like it. Depending how much movement you're making, you could take the short end up to your forehead, or you might lie it down and lean into it. Again, find that point, that soft edge, where you are feeling some sensation. It's not fully restorative. And in fact, here we're finding a fair bit of length along either side of the spine. In the system, the meridian system, we might think of this as urinary bladder meridian. And don't be misled. We're not focused on the organs themselves. In traditional Chinese medicine, the meridians are about our life journey. And rather than be told what that is, see if you can feel into it and allow your story to be yours. Perhaps witnessing it like a mindful, detached observer, feeling what's happening in the body and letting those layers of stories shift and move and reform themselves. As you rest into the posture, allowing yourself to get into a being mode. Part of why we find these yin practices so nourishing is because so much of life is yang, is active and outward focused. If you are prone to fall into competition or a feeling of needing to do more or be more, these practices are a way to help shift your mindset by using your body and come home to being. Nothing that needs to be done. Just being here with yourself. Feeling what you feel. Bring some awareness to the back of the body. Perhaps explore for your next few breaths a sense of expanding the back body on each in-breath, a softening of the back body on each out-breath, as if the muscles alongside the spine could loosen their grip on the bones. Staying here for a few more breaths. And slowly finding your way up out of the pose. You might like to shift any props while you make some transition movements here. You could bring your feet to the ground, maybe even engage the muscles of the legs and lift up like a tabletop, sway a little, or do some of those windshield wiper type actions. And before we set ourselves up for the other side of our half butterfly. One leg is bent, heel again could be drawn in close, or you can let that leg be looser away from the body. Let the straight leg also be soft, and if you were feeling it a lot in the hamstring, maybe bend the knee. If you had a rolled blanket, you could go under the knee. Or maybe you want to use your bolster again. I like mine lying along the top of the leg, but some people place it to the inside as well, so that you can fold over that straight leg. And again, it takes a little bit of fiddling sometimes, adjusting the props to find where that right level of intensity for you is. Try to find that soft edge, and then let yourself sink into it. Breathe with the feelings. Remember to imbue this experience with kindness to yourself. And though some sensations may not be entirely comfortable, we're looking to alleviate future suffering, not create suffering. If in doubt, you can think of what a good friend would say or do. Be that good friend to yourself. Make the pose work for you. If you notice any muscles contracting or gripping, try sending the breath to those areas. Imagine breathing in through the nose, sending the breath to the place that feels contracted or tight or tense. And let the breath expand around that area. Try to create that softness, a sense of letting go. You may become aware that sensations shift and change. Stay open to change. Allow it. Allow movement, even in your stillness. Staying here for a few more breaths. And slowly lifting your head. Take your time coming up and out of the posture. And feel all of that rebounding sensation. As you start to bring some movement to your body, you might straighten out the legs and give them a bit of a wriggle. Maybe even some self-massage, a little bit of a rub. And we'll make the transition over onto our fronts. So finding your way to lie on your belly. Let your legs be loose behind you and maybe cross your arms to make a pillow for your head. If you let your heels flop out to the sides, you might observe a kind of spaciousness through the lower back. And from here we're going to move into a yin style back bend. I'll give you some options. To start with, bring your forearms to the ground. Position your elbows around about under your shoulders and just lift your chest. It's fine if there's a little bit of gripping in the lower back or in the glute muscles. But as you get used to the sensations here, see if you can soften, let your legs stay loose. There's not really any rules about alignment in these yin poses, so you can do whatever feels most natural for your head. It could be to drop the chin and let the head hang, or for some people it's more comfortable even to tilt the chin up. Or you could stay in approximately a neutral spine, neutral neck. Spine is in extension. It may be a little counterintuitive, but often these long-held back bends can be really helpful for those of us who have some back pain. You are always in charge of your own experience here, so see what you need. You could experiment with gripping the buttocks a little more, see how that feels. You could experiment with bringing your feet closer or further apart, see how that feels. You may choose to stay here in a Sphinx pose, or you may feel like you'd like to lift a little higher And bringing the palms to the mat and lifting your arms off. So again, you can decide, do you want your hands turned out a little wider? It's quite a seal-like position. Would you like to bring them in and lift even more? It doesn't matter too much if your shoulders shrug up. Again, we're not hung up on these alignments that we might use in Hatha. Here we want you to find the form of this back bend that works best for you. So I'm going to stay here in my little Sphinx. It's enough for today. And breathe and be and feel and let things shift deep within. It can be really quite comforting to observe the belly moving against the earth. For a few breaths, you might like to take deeper, more intentional breaths. Before returning to a natural breath and that state of allowing. If you've been up in that higher back bend, that seal pose, you're welcome to stay there. But at any time you might like to come back down onto forearms. We've started to move that energy more through the front of the body. We're still leaving the muscles of the back mostly soft. Perhaps just a little bit of engagement if it helps you to feel secure and comfortable. Taking just a few more breaths here. And then as you feel ready, use your hands to press your way back. On your way back to a child's pose, you might just like to make some transition movements. Something like a gentle rounding and arching of your back. You've been in that arched position, that extension for a while. So just see how that rebound sensation is. And before you settle back, with knees a little wider, toes coming closer together, into something like a child's pose. You can leave your arms out long in front, or you could tuck them beside you. If it feels a bit low, you're welcome to pull that bolster in, cuddle into the bolster, Similarly, your head could either be straight or turn to one side. Let it be comfortable for you. Here in Balasana, your child's pose, you're very steady. You can release all muscle engagement and your body won't tip over in any way. And curled in like this, our spine takes on the singular curve of infancy before we need to hold our head up, and those natural curves at the neck and lower back come into being. Here we can be curled up, nurtured, safe. Again, you may send some awareness to the back of your body, perhaps a sense of breathing to the back of the lungs, back of the ribs. If the idea of chi through meridians speaks to you, you can cultivate a sense, a feeling, or a visualization of the free flow throughout all the channels of your body. And perhaps your thoughts and feelings run more to the connective tissue, the network of fascia that integrates all of the body. Picture it nourished, hydrated, juicy, interconnected and communicative. Staying here for just a few more breaths. Slowly beginning to find your way up out of the pose. And you can make your way towards your resting pose. As you find your way over onto your back, you might want to pause and give your knees some movement. Again, you can return to this sort of windshield wiper, loosening feeling. But any movement that comes spontaneously to you is welcome as you make the transition into your rest and find your way into a nice wide-spaced resting place. And take the legs as wide as you like. Take your arms away from your body. You might think of this as a starfish pose. Or some people call it the pentacle. A place to let your stories, your wisdom, and those layers that you've held within your body Let them find their own level. This integration, returning to homeostasis. Feeling and seeing yourself through the lens of kindness. Trusting that you can simply be. You can stay in this resting place, breathing and being. And when it feels time for you to start to bring movement to your body, perhaps begin just with your fingers, giving them a wriggle. And then with your toes, giving them a wriggle. And then as you feel ready, giving the knees a hug in, embracing yourself with kindness, self-acceptance. Taking your preferred arm overhead and rolling to one side. Again, you can rest in for longer if you choose to, until you're ready to find your way up. Your yin practice for peaceful embodiment is now complete. You may choose to sit quietly for a little longer, or move gently back into your doing mode.